was excited for my first high school dance. My dad had given me a little allowance to buy my own outfit, and I was feeling confident and good. And I was standing with my best friend, and I was wondering, maybe I'll get to dance with someone. Maybe this will be the first time I get asked to dance by a boy, right? When all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I see this boy across the gym floor. And he is looking right at me and just smiling, eye contact, full smile. I started to look to my right, look to my left. I'm like, is this guy looking at me? I could not believe it. I'd seen him around school and I thought he was super cute. He was older, he was an athlete. And so I couldn't believe this was happening. Now, of course, I turned to my best friend and I'm like, oh my goodness, what if he asked me to dance? What do we do? Should we go in the bathroom and practice? Totally freaking out. But finally, I said, well, I'm determined to dance with this boy. So I walked in his direction, and I just casually lingered about 20 feet away until he finally asked me to dance. And we ended up dancing to all the high school slow songs that night. And by the end of it, he asked for me for my phone number, and he became my first boyfriend. And I remember I was totally happy with that. I felt proud to be his girlfriend. I still felt so special every day that out of all the girls on that dance floor, he chose me. And so for me, high school was looking up. Except after we did that for a few months, he ended up talking to me one day and said, Ashley, I wish we could spend more time together. Not just see each other at school and not just talk on the phone. So he kind of convinced and pressured me and kept nagging me into this idea of lying to my parents and going out on an in-person date. And before I knew it, over and over, I was lying to my parents to go see this boy. But in addition to him pressuring me to lie, he was also pressuring me into other things every time I hung out with him. I didn't know if this was normal. I didn't know if I was supposed to do these things. I didn't want to, but felt maybe I should. And so I didn't know how to understand what I was experiencing. There was verbal abuse and emotional abuse. Because on top of him pressuring me into things I didn't want to do, he would also make jokes about me, make jokes about my looks. He would tell funny stories in front of his friends. And if I got upset, he would say, stop acting like such a baby. It's just a joke. And then other days, he was as sweet as can be. He was the boy I'd met on the dance floor. Now, this was a lot to deal with, a lot to manage, a lot of conflicting feelings and emotions. And on top of that, once the friends started to hear stories, they spread those stories around the school. And before I knew it, it got to the bullies. And now I was being bullied 10 times over. From names being hurled at me in the hallway, to threats when I walked out of school, being pushed into my locker, and even seeing horrible things written about me on the bathroom walls. I turned to pretty much every unhealthy coping mechanism that you could possibly imagine. I was severely depressed and anxious, and I didn't know how to manage those feelings. I turned to alcohol in my parents' home when I felt sad. I couldn't sleep at night. I dreaded going to school. I had really disordered eating habits because I would look in the mirror and just tear myself apart. I dropped out of college, and I didn't get involved in anything. And I didn't think that anyone could ever possibly understand, so I just kept it bottled up. I thought to myself, I have nothing left, but that means that I have a blank slate, and I can create anything I want from this moment forward. And that was what got me going. I knew I wanted a career in criminal justice and communications and social change. And so I finally went back to college, and 7 years after dropping out, I graduated with a degree in justice, but didn't just graduate, I graduated as valedictorian of my entire class. No matter who you are, we're all gonna face setbacks and obstacles and challenges in life. And it's those moments where the real skills come in, where leadership is required more than ever. Even more important than the idea and the plan is possessing the skills to be emotionally strong, resilient, and persistent so that no matter what comes your way, you're willing to persevere. I realized that there's 3 major mistakes that I made, 3 things that held me back. And when I started rebuilding my life, I focused on being exceptional in those 3 areas. And I want to share them because they're areas that didn't just impact my life, but that can apply to every single person in this room right now. Now, the first problem that I faced started all the way back when I was in high school, and that was denial. Denial is so damaging because it doesn't let us to effectively manage our negative emotions. And the longer that we avoid the truth about what we're dealing with, the longer a problem persists. And what happens is that we end up turning to self-neglect at a time when all we need is self-care. The second area that I struggled with, that so many people struggle with, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is having some pretty toxic people around you. We all know that there is a high risk of being surrounded by unsupportive friends, dating partners, peers, bullies at school, maybe even family or people in our life that don't support us and our goals, which means that your circle matters. And your second task after prioritizing you is to prioritize who you spend your time with. Finding friends that align with your values and your goals, and even being able to recognize when people don't. And sometimes that's hard because you might have to make the tough decision to set a boundary or even distance yourself from someone who's in your life. And then the third mistake that I made that many people make was having a negative mindset, primarily having a negative outlook on situations and having some pretty negative inner self-talk. I might have been bullied as a student, but I eventually became my own worst bully. All the things that they said to me, I was saying to myself. And when you talk to yourself that way, it's going to keep you stuck. A lot of people operate from this lens of just being a victim of their circumstances. But simply by changing your thoughts and looking at things differently and speaking more positively to yourself, you can change the outcomes of your life. And that's something that I believe is the greatest skill that each and every one of us has to master. Instead of saying, why is this happening to me? Asking, how is this happening for me? What am I gaining from this experience? And reframing difficult situations to see silver linings, saying, maybe I can't do this, but what can I do? Because I know and I believe that if you can develop this muscle, you can truly spot opportunities everywhere.